Wow. So
Oh
they're
boy, we got to be careful now.
officially being recorded now, so behave.
Yes, nice comment from please. All right.
Great. Well, we're going to get started. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. This is in my office. This is great.
Oh, you guys got muted.
Tom, I think you muted yourself.
There we go. We're back. Are we back? Are we alive? Yeah, that's better. So that painting back there, that I had that painted and bought it from one of our pastors, Northern Ontario. It's actually Pine Lake, which is just off of Highway 17, outside of North Bay. And it was Tim Hammond that painted that for us. So yeah. So that's yeah. So that's one of those things that from my office I get to keep because I bought it. But yeah, so thank you for joining us today. This is going to be fun. Got some neat things to talk about. I'd like just to just open in prayer, and so why don't we do that together? Father, you are God of grace and mercy, and we love you, Lord. Thank you so much for our family and the fact that we get to be together and do this thing that you have entrusted to us, this life together. Father, I pray today that you would bless our time together. Thank you for the encouragements and the eye-openers of the stats that we will share together today. Lord, use this for your glory, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so Blair Hicks is one of our office administrators here. She works closely with Tim, and she's going to lead some things right now. So Blair, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Blair Hicks, and I actually go to Forward Church. I go to the Kitchener location, so the smaller location. And I am going to be multitasking as we get this meeting started. I'm admitting people and all sorts of different things. But one thing I wanted to do as a little bit of a buffer while we wait for the stragglers that come in, most of you probably already know the three directors here at Fed Central, but just in case you don't, or don't know them as well as maybe you'd like to, I've got some fun facts about our three directors. And if you want to open your chat, I'm going to ask a question about each of our directors. If you know the answer and you put it in the chat and you get it right, I have a $10 Tim card for you that I'm going to mail to you. So, but you have to get it right. Why don't we dive in? Our first question is about Tom, our regional director here. And the question to get to know Tom better is, what did Tom sell to pay for Bible college? And you can put in the chat because I know you're muted. Okay, it says his car.
I think more specific.
Let's get specific. That's a good, I mean, I feel like you could guess that. But what kind of car? If it was a car, maybe it was something else. There are two possible answers. Okay, so Aaron Grote was first with, he said his vet.
Chevette or Corvette?
Ooh, good question. Specific. Getting people in ministry to be specific. Oh, I didn't think that was gonna be a chore, but
Gotta be precise, guys. Just like in the pulpit.
John
Margerson.
Yes, he said Corvette.
Yeah.
So is that specific enough?
Yes, that is one thing I had to sell. I sold something else as well.
Greg said Lada.
Sporty European driving.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I didn't have a Lada.
His soul. Aaron said his soul. Oh, it says Russ. He said you also sold your dirt bike.
Yes, I raced motorcycles, so I sold my motorcycles at
Okay.
the time. That's right. You're right on, Russ.
We'll give Russ and we'll give John the Tim card. We'll get another Tim card. I've made an executive decision that we will give each of you your Tim card. So well done. Oh, sorry, Russ, you don't have Timmy's out there. Well, then we are going to get you a solid handshake instead from Tom himself, okay? Get mailed back.
Alright,
We'll figure
I did it on Monday. On Monday, I shook his hand, so you got it in advance.
Yeah, okay. So the next question is about our church vitality director, Tim here. What sport did Tim play in high school? He was excited to ask this one because he said it felt like it meant that he did stuff, athletic stuff in school, right? It meant that you were like, made you feel important.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Fencing, somebody said fencing. Somebody did say disc golf, so we knew that one was gonna probably pop up. Basketball,
Yeah,
chess,
basketball, yeah.
synchronized swimming. Nobody's gotten it yet. Sumo wrestling. Geez, I didn't even know these were sports in high school, but I was not a sporty person in high school. Nobody's guessed it yet. Why don't we circle back to that one and give them an opportunity? Football is not correct. You might be, oh,
Correct.
sorry, Tom, I got that one. I think that admitted one. Oh, soccer, nope, nobody's got it. Now they're just guessing sports.
Yeah.
Now they're just guessing sports.
Do I have
Lacrosse.
to give the
no.
answer? I don't think
I
anybody's gonna
think
win.
we should come back to that one.
Okay.
This is good though. You thought your friend that everybody, oh, volleyball, Kevin
Kevin Faso.
he got volleyball. Well done, Kevin. That is correct.
Yeah.
Were you
It's
the
going
captain?
through all the high school
I was,
sports.
Yeah, yeah.
I was the starting setter.
You were the starting setter.
Mhm.
Are there captains?
Got the height
in
for that.
volleyball?
so
Yeah,
that's
I
good.
couldn't
Yeah.
reach the basketball, but I could reach the volleyball. Yeah.
That's front roll. You should still feel important too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's important. Well done. I will get Kevin your gift card. Someone was going to say Dungeons and Dragons. That's-
No, I don't think that's a sport.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
So the last question is about our church planting director, Bashara, who's not here to defend himself. So feel free to stab teasing at him today. So this one's a controversial
Blair,
one for
Blair,
prior-
I'm with you. Sorry
Oh,
for
I'm
that.
sorry.
And you know what? You know what? Yeah. So go ahead, shoot for it. Go ahead.
You're nervous now, Bashara. Now you're like, what is she gonna ask?
Uh-oh. No
Okay.
worries. Go ahead.
How many times has Bashara been in jail? Not to jail visiting. In jail. How many times has Bashara been in jail? Somebody said 4.
Closest answer for this
Yes,
one.
sure. Ben said 8. 3. And we are not gonna get specific as to why.
Just to leave it out. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Serious. Maybe we should broaden the question to how many times has the collective directors been in jail?
Still the same
I
answer.
think the answer will be the same.
Yeah. That's reassuring. No, nobody, okay, so the closest so far, get your answers in last second here. Closest so far is Ben with 8. Bashara, you told me it was over 100. Were you pulling my leg when you said that? Because that seems excessive.
No, actually, Blair, yeah, I feel that there's, actually twice, but over than 100, it was really as my ministry as a chaplain, 2005 in Lebanon. I used to visit, but I was in jail twice
Okay,
for ministry persecution back then in Lebanon. So,
okay.
this is that, yeah. So two. So who's matching that? I'm not sure, but yeah.
Okay, so the closest was Mark Mabry. 100 definitely did make me scratch my head a little bit.
No, 100. No, but again, sorry for that. But yeah, twice. Yeah.
I think I speak for the rest of us as I say that's a relief.
Yeah.
2 is much better than 100.
Yeah.
There you go, Mark. We will send you your Tim card. And now you all know your directors a little bit better from this meeting. Now I wanted to just cover as we dive into the statistics here that we are all excited about and here to hear about. You are welcome to ask some questions during the meeting. We'd encourage you to do that on the comments on the chat. I've got it open here so I can read it. I'm happy to read it to Tim and Tom and Jack here. But we are going to have a question and answer at the end as well. So why don't, without further ado, Tim, why don't you give us an explanation as to what the purpose of the survey was, and then you can prompt me to start it up when you feel like we're ready.
All right, well, thank you, Blair. Yeah, we did this survey back in the spring, and many of you filled out the survey and will remember that. And we had 81% of our churches respond, which is a pretty high percentage, representing well over 90% of our people were actually represented in the responses. And we did some reasonable estimates, projections for the rest. And the reason we did this survey, there were three reasons. The first was simply encouragement. We want to be encouraged by what God is doing in our movement. The second thing is measurement. It's often been said that what gets measured gets done. And when we're measuring important areas of our ministry, it just points to things that are important that we all be doing together. And so it's meant to be to spur us on in what we're doing together as a movement, in both where we're doing well and where we need to improve. And then finally, it's to help assist Feb Central, because it's really going to help us in knowing where we can, apply our efforts where it's needed. And we've already been doing that. We passed to Bashar Karkafi the number of churches who were interested in planting in the future. And we got that from the survey, and their team is already on that, following up with churches who have a desire to plant, who they might not know of it. So that's been a great help to us already. But Blair, I think we're ready to dive in and take a look at the stats with no further ado. All right. Let's take a look. These are 2023 results, and in some cases we'll be commenting that we're actually ahead of that already in 2024, and that actually goes for the very first stat that we want to share. The first one is, how many churches did we have as of 2023? And
Small glitch.
small glitch. All right,
Just a second.
it's coming. It's
It's
coming.
coming.
Right.
We just want to make them anticipate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, Blair.
Okay, there we
it
go.
is.
There we
There
go.
it is. All right, let's go to that first slide. The number of churches in Feb in 2023 was 293. Now, it actually is 299 right now, Tom. And
As of today, we're at 299,
yeah,
which is amazing.
300 is going to happen. It might happen by year's end, either a new plant or a church joining us,
Yes.
but we're close. We're close. But it was 293 in 2023. The average size, so you add them all up and divide by, you end up with 162. The median size is 100, so that's the middle number.
Yeah.
The average is skewed higher, of course, because of larger churches make the average higher. But the middle, if you were to go line them all up in order of size, the middle median is 100. And that's higher than we estimated a few years ago. It would have been around 85 or 87, I think, when we did when we estimated the median a few years ago.
Yeah, that's a concept that's important to underline, because a lot of us who are not stats people
Yeah,
confuse average and median
That's
all
right.
the time.
That's
And
right.
and that's, you think median, you think that's the average. Well, no, it's not the average.
Yeah.
So,
and our raw attendance on an average Sunday in Feb Central across our movement, almost 50,000, 47,400 is the estimate of how many people are in Feb Central churches every week, which is a pretty significant number to think about. When you think about that, would fill the sky dome.
And again, that's higher now than it was, right, because we've got extra churches in there, so we're probably closer to the 49,000 or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably higher this year.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
yeah, we are
2024.
higher already.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then this is really exciting to me. We estimate that's 10,500 children and youth. That's, about over 20% of that 47,000 is children and youth each week. And that really bodes great for the future as well. So those are some pretty interesting stats just at a high level about who we are as a movement. And any comments?
Well, yeah, one thing we had talked about, when we were first reviewing these was sort of the ratio of the attendance versus the population and the significance there.
Yes.
Do you wanna, unpack that a little bit?
Tom, maybe you can jump in on that, because I've heard you talk about just, while this number is great, there's more people to reach.
Yeah. So part of the challenge is, we're getting close to 50,000 people. That's pretty exciting when you think of it like that.
Yeah.
But then when you back up and you say, okay, our region is Ontario and Anglophone Quebec, we take out the Francophones and you say, okay, we're still 21 million people. So there's just a drop. So we have a lot of work to do, guys. And ladies, we have a lot to do. So that's the reality check is there. but there is encouragement in it that this can happen. And, you know, you think of how, you know, the Lord and his ministry began just with the disciples. And then that first upper room, there was, you know, there was a small church gathering in that first thing, and they changed the known world. So, you know, we've got much more than that. We can do have a massive impact.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, and the children and youth number there too. I know we put the number in there, but for someone like me who's visual, the percentage of that was like 22%.
Yeah,
Which was like
Yeah.
a quarter, and you guys were sort of talking about how that's really incredible that a quarter of it is children and youth,
yeah,
which is, you know, you look at the ratio and that's like, wow, we've got a lot of work to do. But then an encouraging piece at the
Yeah.
end of it is like, wow, quarter of them are children and youth,
Yeah.
which is cool.
the fellowship started as a youth movement. It was a bunch of youth leaders who, this was, you know, pushing against the bad doctrine that was going on out there in the day, who started, it ultimately started the fellowship. And it's always been valuable to us. And we just want to commend all of our churches for that strong emphasis on children and youth, and encourage, keep the foot to, you know, pedal to the metal on our
Yeah.
children and youth.
Yeah, one of the markers actually of movements that are in decline is little to no youth ministry.
Yeah.
And so this is super encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's go to the next one, Blair. Let's go.
if I can get there.
All right.
There we go.
Our next slide is about evangelism. We have an estimated 1,923 baptisms that happened in Fev Central in 2023, and that's very exciting to think, almost 2,000. Tom and I have estimated that about a decade ago that number would have been around 1,300. We don't have exact stats, but that was an estimate. The next stat, 1,500 first-time decisions for Christ. That number, I suspect, is actually a lot higher, but it's actually a stat that many of our churches don't keep. But I think with reason, because it's harder to know. A baptism happens or it doesn't, so it's easy to count. Whereas a first-time decision that people may or may not tell you.
Yeah.
And we want, and sometimes we're hesitant to say it because we're not sure. We think they've crossed over the line, but we don't know. They haven't
Yeah.
told us.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I was surprised at the number of churches that aren't even trying to keep track of that stat. Well, at the same time, thinking when I pastored it, I can't remember if I actually knew it or not either. So I do understand why churches don't. But I've been thinking about it, that it's an important number to at least estimate in our churches, because we want to see people saved. And it also points to people who we're going to invite to be baptized as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Tom, you wanted to jump in on that?
Yeah, a couple things. First off, just to understand that this is an annual number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's encouraging, and to see us go from around 1,300, which we think that's a pretty good educated guess 10 years ago, to say that we have grown in the number on an annual basis up to 1,900.
yeah,
That's a big deal, because that's you know 600 more
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
And to see that grow, one of the things that we're starting to see happen right now, we think next year
Mhm.
is going to blow that number out of the water.
yeah,
Because we are as staff, we're in different churches almost every week. And the stories that we're hearing this year are different than we've heard in the past. More and more baptisms than we have in many of our churches than they've ever seen. And you know, I went to speak at one church, and they're like, "Well, we're sorry we had to change the service, and you're going to be on a little later because we're doing 2 more baptisms." And like, you don't have to apologize for that.
Yeah.
This is great stuff. So it's actually a really exciting day.
it really is.
Yeah.
Now look at this next number. That's the raw number of people in Feb who were involved in some kind of evangelism training. And I was quite encouraged by this. We always want to see it grow, but 4,900, over 10% of our people were somehow involved in evangelism training, equipping the saints to do the work of an evangelist. And that's a pretty encouraging number, I think, because it bodes well for continuing to evangelize.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think one of the things that my experience has been is that when a church trains their people to evangelize, evangelism happens somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just does, and if you don't, it doesn't. Just back to the number of decisions and
Yeah.
and sometimes the reluctance to, you know, keep track of that.
Yeah.
And I think we have that, right? I've just started a series through the Book of Acts at Grace and Alliston.
Yeah.
And the thing that has struck me is the fact that they're constantly talking about numbers.
Yeah.
Constantly,
It's true.
all the way through. Like, it's like, well, there were 3,000 on the day of Pentecost, but by the time Peter and John are arrested, now it's up to 5,000. And what I'm dealing with the deacons now, and it grew so fast that all of a sudden they've got all these problems because the church has just grown so quickly, and they didn't have the system to be able to work with it. And we're seeing some of that, right?
We are.
Some of our churches are saying, we're growing so fast right now, we're struggling to keep up, and praise God for that.
That's a great point, Jack. That's good. Let's jump to the next category. Are we getting any questions online there, Blair?
Not yet.
All right.
Do you want to touch on any recommendation? Maybe somebody doesn't know how the best way to track something like first time decision. Do you have any advice on that, or is that a conversation for another day? Maybe.
I don't have specific
Yeah.
recommendations. It's gonna be, I think, a bit different in each church,
Yeah.
and there's gonna be some estimation involved.
Mhm.
But I think just knowing that we're trying to keep track of
Mhm.
that will help during the course of the year. Oh yeah, that person there, and you can start to
Yeah.
get an estimate of who it is. And
Mhm.
and if you're a multi-staff church, you can do that in children's ministry and other ministries.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, then just a reminder for the people who did come in a little bit late, feel free to jump on the chat and send your questions. We can answer those live for you today. Carry on there.
All right, let's take a look at the discipleship plan. This, I was actually pretty encouraged by this stat. I didn't know what it would come back as. 48% of our churches say they have a plan, a discipleship plan for how they're going to disciple their people. Now, we didn't ask all the details of what that plan is, but the fact that, well, we're estimating 48% said they're doing it,
Mhm.
or projected they're doing it, that's quite encouraging. And that in raw numbers, that's 140 churches. And so I'm encouraged by that, because our churches are taking seriously the command to go and make disciples and know that not only do we evangelize people, but we want to disciple them in strength in the Lord. A few other stats on discipleship, and then we'll talk about them. Churches that have a leadership development plan, 2,300, over 2,300 people were involved in some kind of leadership development plan in the church. And when I served as leadership development director, that was something that I had a heart for, just seeing our lay leaders trained in the churches. And we're continuing to encourage that in Church Vitality, as well as Rick encouraging that, of course, as leadership advancement director now, Rick Buck. But that 5% is not bad. I think we'd like to see that higher, but it's still an encouraging number to see that we have 2,300 people being trained as leaders across our movement in our churches. This number is interesting. 41% of the people in our churches are serving. It's an interesting number to me, because when we do consultations, we often hear we need more volunteers. Where do we find more volunteers? And so it suggests to me that 40% isn't enough, but it's better than the 80-20 rule that we offer. Were you saying that to me, Jack?
Yeah, oftentimes, yeah, then that's definitely one of the challenges, right? Is how do we get people mobilized, right? And it doesn't happen without that training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the 60-40 rule is better than the 80-20 rule.
We like
Not
that.
twice as
Yeah.
good, but we need to keep encouraging that. But still, that's pretty neat that almost 20,000 people are serving in some way in our churches.
Yeah.
And then small group participation is a similar stat. And I don't know if there's a correlation or not, but I suspect there might be, that 18,000 people are involved in some kind of small group participation during the course of the year in our churches as well. Let's open for questions and comments here. If any, is there any online that people have asked?
Not yet.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump to the next slide then. Okay, this is all about church planting, and I'm excited by the church planting numbers. You see at the top there, over 1 in 6 Feb Central churches were planted in the last 15 years. That raw number is 53, and we estimate, and 33 of them are active plants right now as we speak, and the other ones are various churches that are already established. They're fully recognized churches, or they're a site at one of our other churches, and so they're not active as a plant. They're already planted. But that's a pretty amazing number. And when I subtract that number from the 293, that would mean we'd be a movement of 240 churches, not 293, if we hadn't made this strong focus on church planting. Take a look at the pie chart there. We asked the churches, do you have a desire or plan to plant? And what we saw that is almost 100 churches, 97 have a desire, and then an additional 13%, we not only have a desire, we have a plan to plant. So we're sitting, if you add that up, 46% of our churches have a desire or plan to plant. And Tom, that number would not have been that high, say 10 or 15 years ago. We don't know what it was exactly, but it would have been, what would have been,
No.
you estimated it would have been?
So if we go back to 2009, when I started as church planting director, it was very difficult for me to get actually invited into a church to speak about church planting. Nobody wanted to say they were opposed to church planting, but nobody really wanted one. And so there's been a very significant shift in our culture, where we have moved on that. This is a huge change. I don't know what the number would have been, but it would have been very low.
Maybe 5% or less.
It was that low, yeah.
Yeah. So this is culture transformation in
It
Fed
is.
Central, to see this kind of enthusiasm for church planting. And again, as I mentioned, Bashar and the team are already using the information that you've given us to reach out to those churches to see how they can help the ones that have a desire to plant, move to having a plan to plant.
That's right.
And,
But
yeah,
there is a question though, like we got 159 churches, so that's
Yeah.
what, 54%
yeah,
that are saying there's no desire. And my question would be why would we have that? And why is that number that high, that there's no desire? I mean, desire is one thing, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't mean it's going to happen necessarily,
Mhm.
but if there's no desire, I'd be asking, why is that?
That's a
I
good question.
There's some of it that maybe they're just in the midst of revitalization, or they're at a place in the life of their church where they just haven't got to thinking about that yet. But if they actually did and redid the survey, I think some would say, well, we do want to do that. It's just we're just getting our heads above water right now. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily as negative as that sounds. But there may be some who, for whatever reason, that's just not what they're interested in. Tom, I don't know what you've experienced in that, in when you run into churches that don't want to plant, because occasionally I'm sure we do. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly there's been occasion when I've approached churches and they have had such a negative experience in their community with, other groups planting that they have a bad taste in their mouth towards church planting. But that is very rare in
Yeah.
our fellowship.
Mhm.
So I would expect that this is more of a neutral response
Okay.
than it is an actual negative response.
Okay.
They haven't actually thought about it
Right.
in relation to them,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
they're in a place where they're struggling, so they have no desire to plant right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're doing,
Yeah.
not so much a case of
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
negative.
Yeah, that makes sense to me in what I see out there too, Tom.
Mhm.
Let's talk about this, the bar graph there. What we did is we compared church plants, these 53, to the rest of the churches that were, every church was planted at some point, of course, but ones that are longstanding churches, more than 15 years old. And we were curious to see what would the rates be in some of these areas that we looked at. And it was very interesting. The baptism rate in church plants is 5.4% per 100 attendees versus 4% in non-church plants. And that actually, when you look at that, that's significantly higher, 30 or more percent higher than in regular church. And we would expect that, because church plants, we train them to be evangelistic, and if they don't evangelize, they're going to die, because we tend to do church plants where we're really focused on reaching new people. That's what we emphasize. But it's very encouraging to see that that's actually happening in our church plants. They are doing what they're intended to do, being evangelistic. Evangelism training, notably more people in a church plant are trained in evangelism than in our non-church plants. So again, we would be kind of upset if that wasn't the case. But at the same time, it's really good statistically to see that it's notably more in the church plant. Discipleship plan. I found this really interesting, everyone, because our church plants would be known for evangelism. That's what they're trying to do. But someone might, ask, well, yeah, but are they discipling anybody? Are they just so busy trying to reach people that they don't have a plan? But the way our church planning system is established, that Tom established and Bashar continues to lead with the team, is that they're all about discipleship. They're not simply about reaching people and don't worry about what happens next. And so we actually see a higher percent of our church plants have a discipleship plan, quite notably higher actually than our non-church plants. And then finally, small group participation, which is often a strong discipleship indicator. It's just way higher in our church plants than it is in our non-church plants. And we still appreciate, you know, what our non-church plants are doing. They're still doing great things and there's great numbers even so, but it's really encouraging to see not only that we're establishing evangelistic church plants, but we're establishing with roots. So they're designed to be healthy churches once they're past being a church plant and they're a fully established church.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking that with the percentage of the discipleship plan, even that's, if we hadn't done like a survey like this, maybe we wouldn't have known that, but that's even just knowing that statistic is helpful even in conversation about church planting, maybe with someone doesn't have as much knowledge about it and how it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah,
Just to the positive end of that.
yeah, just so many positive outcomes
Yeah.
beyond the obvious ones of reaching new people for Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Tim, can I share
Go ahead,
something
Bashar.
about, just something quickly that, by God's grace, we are moving forward as a church planting ministry to be sure by God's grace that every church plant, every planter, somehow he is relaunching and adopting the multiplication culture through evangelism and discipleship.
Very good.
And the major idea here is we are shifting by God's grace from the additional mentality of discipleship and evangelism to multiplication culture by God's grace. And for that reason, these numbers, I do believe in the coming years, you will see these numbers on evangelism and discipleship. And even though you called it small groups, we call it actually ECOS ministry, or multiplication through house churches, or small groups, if you want to say. But we are focusing by God's grace to relaunch the spirit of multiplication that the early church used to do, and many churches all over the centuries during the revivals they used to do, which is to multiply through evangelism and disciple-making ministry. And our church planters, the church plants, they are doing fantastic job on this level. And our church planting team, they are also encouraging and empowering our church plants to do that. Quick example, Baba, and I will conclude in a couple seconds. I was teaching a course in heritage, and this course is part of our church planting certificate that Tom launched a couple of years ago. And the goal is of this certificate is to equip and recruit young church planters, potential church planters throughout this program. And guess what? After a discussion with Dr. Hausen in Heritage, I told him, if we want to move forward with this certificate, I want to see this certificate not just teach, but practice. So out of the 4 days of this course, which is evangelism and disciple-making ministry course, we did 2 full days on the ground, prayer walk evangelism, door-to-door evangelism, and we practice the disciple-making ministry with our planters on the ground. So by God's grace, this is what we are shooting for, not just to teach it, but practice it by God's grace.
Excellent, Bashar. Thank you so much, and thank you for all you're doing in
Tim,
that area.
just one thing I wanted to ask you, because
Yeah.
I think the number, I have a discrepancy in my
Yeah.
stuff that I have. The number of churches planted, you say, in the last 15 years.
Where
Did you get that number?
We have 33 active, and then you go through the list, and there's about 20 more that would be ones that were planted. If we missed something, are you thinking it's low?
You've missed a bunch.
We've missed a bunch.
Yeah, because
Okay.
they probably got taken off the list for one reason or another,
Fair enough.
because they were mature and already planted.
Okay.
So that number is gonna be at least in the 70 range.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe higher than that.
We'll update that.
Yeah,
number.
so that's,
I've
don't
got
post that number
numbers.
anywhere, guys,
Yeah,
because it's not
yeah, yeah.
accurate. We'll have to
All
go
right,
through
all
it.
right.
We will, Tim and Bashar and I will go
Yeah.
through that and
Yeah, Tom, Tim, it's Steve. I have those numbers. It's probably close to 80.
yeah.
I've got it in a chart I can send to you guys.
Yeah,
All right,
thank you.
my apologies if we slipped on
Yeah.
that number,
Well-
we will add to it. Yeah.
Technically, it's kind of a good thing, because if you're gonna make a mistake, it's better that the actual number is a better number. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right, that's
You,
right.
you know, don't sweat it,
Yeah,
we'll fix it, and technically it's a positive.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Uh,
All right, let's go to the next one. Yeah.
Can I say something about the
Oh,
no
yeah,
desire?
Blair.
Because I know we were sort of like, oh, that's a lot, but at the same time, when you consider the 70 potentially 80 churches that were planted in the last 15 years, if the 54% changes their mind, and we add to that pie, think about how many even more,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So there's
That's
another
right.
positive takeaway from what potentially could be looked at.
And Tim, by the way, quick thing, you know, your survey helped us to connect with more than 75 churches so far, who they are,
Oh,
they
praise
they
God.
have a desire to plant. And really, I want to say, why, praise the Lord for that. This is helping us to work with our churches closely to move forward for new plants.
Yeah, yeah, very good, very good. Thank you, thank you. And let's go to we're on the next slide. This is an interesting chart and a couple of charts. We wanted to look at the size of churches in Feb Central to understand, you know, who we are by church size as a movement. And I want to start with the bar graph. And there's two things going on in that. One is the number of churches in different sizes, that's the bar. And then the line across it is the number of people in each of those different church sizes. So for example, 149 churches in the 0 to 100 size, and 8,700 people are in those 149 churches, and so forth. 67 in the 100 to 200, 10,000 people in those churches. 200 to 400, 39 churches, but 11,500. 400 to 800, 7,900, but only 15 churches. And then 7 churches of 800 plus with 8,800. And it's fascinating when you think about that. In our largest 7 churches, we have basically the same number of people as we have in our 149 churches of 0 to 100. Now, that's not to say one's better. We're not going to get into that. It's just simply saying that they serve different functions. Our large churches are often regional churches that are helping resource and lead the way in a whole area and make a significant impact there. They baptize quite a lot of people. Our smaller churches, and some of those, of course, are our church plants because they start off as churches under 100 for the most part. And they're often, though, in a community, some of these smaller churches that are a strong gospel witness, and they may not even have the population base to draw from, but they're baptizing people, and they actually baptize at a higher rate, typically in the smaller churches than the larger, although the volume in the larger churches is very significant as well. But that is very interesting to see what we are as a movement. Of course, the biggest group of churches is that 200 to 400 size range. And if you study churches, 200 to 400 is a transitional size. You're either shrinking below it to 180 or something, or you're growing past it to 450, 500. And I think there's lots of potential for many of those churches in that 200 to 400 range to grow through and past that and be planting and multiplying, as we've been talking about. The pie chart just shows the percentage of people in these different size churches. So 18% of our people, almost 19% are in the largest churches, and so forth around the chart. You can see the numbers for yourself. And the largest chunk being 24% in the 200 to 400 size churches. So that's just an interesting stat to look at. And they all, you know, do different things, serve different purposes, and some all the same purposes, of course. Any comments as we look at those churches by size? It's an interesting stat to look at.
To me, it just reminds me that we need all these different size churches, really. That's the bottom line. We need the big churches,
Yeah.
but we also need those churches from 0 to 100.
Yeah, I've served in the lowest, the middle, and the top category, and they're all different, but they're all good in many different ways. And I think that's well said, Jack.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the next one. This is attendance by city size. We wanted to look, and we just broke down cities into small town, large town, small city, medium city, large city, and metropolis. And this is showing where we are by the different geographies, really, that we live in. And so if you take a look at that, you'll see that we have, I'm having trouble seeing it, 61, I believe that number is, in small towns with over 5,000 people in those churches. We have 32 in a large town, that would be 10,000 to 25,000 with 4,400 people, almost 4,500 people. In a small city, we have 8,200 people across 39 churches. In a medium city, and this is our largest group of people, we have 58 churches with almost 13,000 people. So this is, if you're going to say where are Feb Central churches and people, this is the biggest place where we are. And this would be the, the Barries, Kitchener-Waterloo, Guelph, and all kinds of other cities. Brantford just passed the 100,000 mark. Brantford would be another one. And large cities, so this is getting into a place like Hamilton, for example, we would have 6,800 people in 30 churches there. And then interestingly, our largest cities, and this would be three major cities of Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, we have 9,100 people across 60 churches in the largest cities. And so there's some interesting things to think about in where we are located, because we want to reach our whole region. And Tom, I think you had some thoughts and comments to share on that.
Yeah. I mean, as I look at those numbers, it's interesting to see it, but it also kind of grieves me to some extent when I look at Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal and realize that we are just barely scratching the surface there.
Yeah.
And we need more churches started in Ottawa, in Toronto, and in Montreal to impact the bulk of the population of our region. And we have a responsibility to do that, to get the gospel out that way. So that's, to me, if we can turn our focus there and see that statistic changed, that would be, I think that would really honor the Lord.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
there are questions here.
Oh, there's some questions here that are showing up in the chat. Blair, why don't you jump in and share
Yeah,
some of
do
this?
you, I think there's one here. Do you want me to say, do you want me to say who it's from?
I'm sure. Why not?
Okay. Sorry. So Greg McRobbie says, it is awesome that we have seen 53 churches planted, but sobering to think that the total number of churches seems static or even slightly lower over the last 30 years or more. Is there any tracking of church closures, etc.? And are we seeing a decline in the number of churches lost over time? We need both church planting and church enduring, church health. I know this is preaching to the choir.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
Greg, and we would fully endorse what you just said,
Yeah.
that's of course why we do Vitality and
Mhm.
church planning, leadership development, we work together in those areas. But what I would say is when I joined FEB, the number was around 274, and that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that was the number, and I remember scraping to try and actually count those 274 churches when I really tried to count them, so it may have even been a bit optimistic number. But we're at 299 as we speak, so we actually, I wouldn't say we're static, I would say we're growing, and it's accelerating with the church plant. So closures, it's been one a year would be about the average, Tom?
Yeah, 1 or 2 a year, and that also added to that is the odd church that just leaves the family, and so we've had that happen as well, and so that kind of adds to it, and so when you actually see us taking ground and going from 274 over the last 6 years up to 299, that's a huge jump when you look at us historically. And I think we are going to see that accelerate, and we're going to actually see the consolidated changes that are happening.
Yeah.
Largely because the health of our region
Mhm.
has significantly moved upward. Our churches are healthier, they're doing better, they have better systems in place for caring for their people, and they are just naturally growing more and in better ways, actually. So that's encouraging to see.
Good question, Greg. Thank you. And God bless you in Ottawa. You're in one of those major cities,
Yeah.
and we're excited about what's going on there at Brookside.
So another question from Ben Mills. Do
Yeah.
we have stats on what size our churches have planted over the years? Are they big, small, medium?
The question, do we have
Yeah.
stats on the size of our church plants? The answer is yes, because it's all in the data.
Yeah.
And we would have to actually consolidate that and
Probably have.
find out but yeah, we definitely have it. If you have a follow-up, feel free.
Oh, sorry, not the size of church plants, but size of churches that planted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
That's-
we could easily collect that data. I think it's,
Yeah.
Tom, from your experience, would it be safe to say it's often something over 200 that is planting, or
No.
what is it?
Okay,
Okay, tell
No,
us what it is.
small
Yeah.
churches are planting and big churches
Wow.
are
It's all across
planting
the
and
board.
medium. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is across the board.
Mhm.
It's always surprising to me, when people think it can only be a big church, because I've seen the small churches do it again and again.
Yeah.
So no, it has much more to do with
Mhm.
a vision and a passion than it does with church size.
Okay, good, very good, very good. And some, yeah, that, I see your point.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Good.
the encouraging idea also, Tim, that the church plants or the church that we planted for the last 15 years, right now they are reproducing.
Yeah,
And they are planting new churches, and they are small, not small, they are average mid-size churches between 100 to 200 people. So, and they are reproducing, and this is really promising.
wonderful, it's wonderful. Good, good. All right, let's go to, I think this is our last.
No, we have one more.
We have one more. Money, let's talk about money.
Oh,
Look at this. We added up the total budgets of all our churches in 2023, and it's actually kind of incredible, guys, that $106 million was the income of all our churches combined. And when you add that up, that's quite a significant number. And the average income per attender, so this would include children and everything, is $2,200 approximately. So a family of five, that would mean the average is about $10,000, actually $11,000. So that's quite encouraging as well. And it just reminds us that God's entrusted us as stewards with resources to use in his kingdom work. And we are using it, is what this survey is actually showing. Mhm. Anything you guys want to comment on the money? Somebody has a question there, I think.
Yeah, do you have median of that money stat from Kevin?
Do we have a median of that money stat? We could get it, but we didn't calculate that, what it would be, the median church average income per church. What I will say, Kevin, that we notice is that the further east of Belleville you go, often it seems the overall church income isn't as strong. That's a bit anecdotal. I need to check the data, but we do seem to notice that, knowing that you're in Ottawa there, and I think we may have even talked about that before.
Good question.
Good question. Well, is there any other questions there in the chat?
Not in the chat.
Okay, this last stat is gonna blow your minds. This is gonna blow your minds, everyone. This is the one that we have been waiting for. 'Cause-
Wait, there
oh,
is a question that came in.
there
I
is-
don't,
I
I
have
don't
to-
want you to get
I
to
don't
the
want
most
to leave people
important.
hanging on
I
this.
know, but
but,
you need to,
okay.
it's so important that
Okay,
you
Blair.
need to, okay. Mark Mulvey said, can you go back to the first slide and comment on Mike's role and the role of Heritage partnering with youth and children?
Yeah, we'd love to do that.
Do you
yeah.
want to do that now?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
There we go.
And Mark, I so appreciate you asking that. Mark oversees the program at Heritage for youth and I can't remember the title exactly, but youth and family ministry as well as, serving as a key player on staff at Bramley Baptist. And Mike and our whole Feb youth team are doing an incredible job. As you know, they're just getting ready for the Bedlam retreat, and we're anticipating this year, I think, about 2,300 students and leaders being at our Feb youth retreats. And a key part of that is helping our churches to evangelize and disciple their youth. And it's just become such a catalyst, these retreats. And we're hearing about baptisms afterwards, kids coming back to the Lord, all those kind of stories. And the volume of numbers is just incredible. Mike has put a very serious emphasis on leadership advancement and development of leaders. And we're challenging the youth to consider giving their lives to full-time Christian ministry. We realize not all of them will do that, and we want all of them to do whatever it is that God has for them, but we need to challenge that. It used to be in the past, we would tap people on the shoulder and say, I think maybe you should consider going into ministry. And the reality is there hasn't been as much of that, at least we don't think there has in quite some time, but we're really reintroducing that. We're really focusing on that. And this year at Heritage, this is really exciting. Half the incoming class have some connection to Snow Camp. And Heritage is a sponsor, and we are very encouraging of that, Heritage sponsoring. And so we see that, you know, we don't have all the data of what the correlation is, but it's obvious that
There's a
these,
direct,
there's a direct, there's something happening here, that the heritage numbers will hear that they're up, of course, and we're thankful for that. And FEB is making a huge contribution to that,
Yeah.
and our FEB Youth Mike and the team are doing that, so.
Yeah.
Praise
The other
God.
thing that Tim just mentioned, but he passed over quite quickly, is that, you know, that we're expecting to see about 2,300 students in the youth retreats in this season. That's up from last year, which was a stellar 1,900
Yeah,
students.
yeah.
And to see it increase by, we're expecting it to increase by at least 400 this year, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's incredible. So thank you, Mark. And I know you and Mike are talking and just thinking through how the partnership that we have together, how that works. And we appreciate the work you're doing in that program. It's such a vital program, children and youth ministry, and we need more people in children's ministry. We need more people in youth. Those are two of the harder positions to fill in our movement.
Yeah.
Actually, if you have a good children's director or youth pastor, hold on tight, because you know, because they're just so important in our ministry, and we're excited to see, you know, Heritage with that focus on children and youth as part of what they do.
Mhm. I just want to make sure they're, oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry to have postponed the massive.
This is the stat everyone's been waiting for. All right, church names. What are the names across our fellowship? How are we doing on naming our churches is the big question. And fellowship, this is boringly exciting. We are the Fellowship Baptist, and 30 of our churches are fellowship. Community, very popular. Grace, we hope there's lots of grace in the churches called Grace, because they're average.
14 of them.
First, we're confused about this one. There's 10 churches called First Baptist Church, and we will let them discuss that together. And Emmanuel, Bible, Calvary, which I don't think the word Calvary appears in modern translations. It's a King James word, is it not? And so, but it's a good word. Yeah, interesting.
Debate.
Yeah, that was very, when we go to the Ottawa Association, basically every other church is called Calvary. So they keep saying, I'm here from Calvary, and it makes it quite exciting to know where you're from. Calvary, Pembroke, Calvary, Ottawa, Calvary. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you know who the real First Baptist Church is, please let us know.
Yeah.
So we can update our records.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's somebody out there that would.
Yeah.
That really concludes our stats. And we've already had some question and answer. We want to invite a couple of more before we close this off. We aim to be going for an hour here. While we're you're typing any questions, I do want to express thanks to Steve Jones. Steve is on the call, our fellowship president, and he's been working with us as church vitality directors to encourage us to gather these stats, and actually provided financial support from Fellowship National to help us doing this. And I want to just thank him for doing that. And he's wanted to have stats for years, and it's been hard to get these kind of stats. And we're thankful now that this will help not only Feb Central, but help our national fellowship to have a better understanding of who we are as a movement. And the other regions, you know, have been working on this as well.
Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, I did actually. We want to thank to our churches. Again, 82% of our churches, Jack, which is pointing to that stat, participated in this survey. That's great response. That's probably better. I think that's better than we've ever had. And so we're very thankful for that. And we're going to do this next year in the spring, and so be watching for it and know that this is like a baseline that we've been able to create, and now we're going to be able to start comparing year over year, and so that's a really good benefit too. Any other questions coming through, Blair?
None at this point.
All right. Well, I don't want to belabor it. You know what? I see something just came through.
Yes, Kevin. Will we receive a copy of these slides and stats that we can share?
We have a handout that we are going to share. We're just going to review. I want to review that church plant number before we share it widely. So because it looks like we're low on that number, which is a good problem to have. But yes, we will put this out. What we will do is we've recorded this, and so we're going to share this. There were a lot of people who, you know, expressed they wanted to be here but couldn't for whatever reason. And so we will send out a broad email that will attach the stats and include a video of this for people who want to watch it. And it may take us till later in the week or early next week to do that. But you who are here first have the numbers, and so you get the benefit of that.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of this. These are great days to be a part of the fellowship. Our family is doing well. I mean, we've got a lot of room to grow. And the task before us is great. But our God is equal to the task and greater than that. So these are encouraging days. So be encouraged and also know that we are praying for you all the time. We pray for our churches, our pastors, our leaders regularly. So just know that we're here for you, and we love you. We love you all.
And, I want to do one more thanks. Blair. Blair, the reason this looks good is because Blair did the work on the design. You all know that ain't me. And so thank you very much, Blair, for your work. We're so appreciative of your work here in Church Vitality and the blessing you are in our office. So thank you very much.
Thanks, you're welcome.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
Okay.
we're signing off. Thank
Okay.
you all.
Hey, guys.
God
God bless you.
Bye bye.
Bye.